Welcome to the Spiritual Principles Made Practical podcast. I'm your host, Scott Friedman. Hey, and today I'm going to be digging into a more detailed understanding of how I create that I can relate to more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare uh, a creation that I'm working on real time with a creation that I did in the past to see if I can learn and understand better the process and have more confidence about it. Because what's true is that anytime that I've had a great deal of confidence in my ability to create something in my life, I've succeeded at it. And I've been able to relate to it and identify with it, and every time it's happened. And so, it's like, okay, how do I generate that self-confidence whenever I want it? And hopefully, in recording this podcast, I'm going to gain some insights into that because um, I remember when I bought this house that my wife and I have been in for almost 30 years. Uh, we were looking to create a new home for ourselves in this area for a couple years. And all of a sudden, one day, I was walking out of this meeting and I said, you know what? I can do this now. And I just knew it. I had the self-confidence, I had the inner knowing, I had the ability to relate to it. I just knew that I could buy a house in this area that we wanted to move. And lo and behold, everything just we were in escrow within a week. We closed on time. Everything just fell into place. And and the question became, what um, what happened? What made the difference between not seeing how to proceed and relating to it happening so completely with so much confidence that through the whole process, I was just calm and centered as could be. And it was, and so I wanted to learn from that. And so what I'm going to do is applying that to, uh, what I'm currently working on, which is to advance win-win thinking in the world to the point where it's the dominant thinking, not the only thinking, just the dominant thinking. And it's like, okay, so I have a desire, right? So I had a desire to get a house in this area where we're living now. So I have a desire. For a long time, I didn't uh, identify how I was going to do it, right? It's like, yeah, no, I want to do it. It's a goal, but I didn't know. And one of the big differences between creating uh, win-win thinking as a dominant thinking in the world and creating this house for us was in creating win-win thinking. I know that something that I didn't know then, which is that the value of achieving any goal is the growth that's required of it. And certainly in some respects, and I'm not exactly sure, what, but what's coming to me anyway is that my to get the house, I had to believe in myself more. I had to believe that I could do it, and that when that belief was strong enough, then I became aware and confident of the steps that I was absolutely capable of taking to make it happen. And so with the um, advancing win-win thinking, I know because I know to look for what's the growth that I have to have in order to make that happen. And that growth is that I have to identify more with being one with all things. It's like, okay, and that's an ongoing process. And just like, there were steps along the way, there are steps in relating to being one. And and so one step, it's not exactly relating to being one, but it's a kind of on the way, is to see myself in other people and to see other people in me and to continue to expand that, right? And so when I see other people, I see them, you know, participating in activities that bring joy and upliftment to their life. Okay, that's me. I participated in activities that bring joy and upliftment in my life, like recording this podcast is one of them. And so anyway, but what happens is that I wrote a whole book about this entitled using engagement in the physical world as a tool for spiritual growth is I look at I measure how much am I relating to being one with all things, and I know I'm making progress when I see with greater clarity and certainty steps that I can take to advance win-win thinking, because I know that the more that I accept and relate to and identify with being one with all that exists, that the greater clarity I'm going to have and the energy and ability as to what steps to take to advance win-win thinking to that point in the world. And I was excited because within the last 2 weeks I got this idea, that I on this podcast I could tell people, you know what? Example is the most powerful form of leadership. So if you'd like to share an example from your life of how you created a win-win situation, then I want to interview you, right? And we want to put it out there to the world, right? Because so that we can inspire other people, but also enhance our ability to identify win-win solutions, right? Because win-win solutions, I mean, by their very nature, are hugely uplifting. I mean, who doesn't want more upliftment in their life, really? So anyway, so I'll do a brief, because example is the most powerful form of leadership. I'll give you a brief story. I had a friend who wanted to buy a house and she didn't have a down payment and she couldn't afford, these 100% loans, because the interest rates were crazy. So I really felt good about it. So I advanced her the 20% down payment, and she went and got the house, and we had an agreement that I'd be paid back that money, with a certain rate of return, when she, sold or refinanced or, or could had, enough equity there to do that. And uh, but there would be no payments until that point because it couldn't really, there wasn't the income to support all that. So I structured it so it would work for her, right? So that what she was paying in principal, interest, taxes, and insurance was equal to or less than what she was already paying in rent. So if she could pay the rent, she could pay the house upkeep and stuff. And and there was risk on my part, right? Because I mean, if I said, well, if you end up selling the house and there's not enough equity to pay me back, or to pay me back, only partially, um, I'm not going to come after anything else for you. I mean, I'll just eat that, right? Because I believe in you. I believe in what we're doing, and I had this just inner confidence, that it would work and that it would be good. And whenever I've had that inner confidence in an investment, it's always worked out for me. So I went and I said, yeah, there's some risk, but I'm pretty sure, I mean, it's always worked out for me before, and I just feel really good about it, so I'm going to do it. So the way it turned out was 6 or 7 years later, she sells the house. The house is appreciated enough to where she can pay me back plus the return that we agreed to. And in addition to that, she pocketed after tax 25% of the purchase price because the house had appreciated that much. Now, I didn't know for sure any of this was going to happen, and so there was risk on my part and stuff, but I felt good about it. But in the end, I mean, it worked out great, right? I made a decent return on my money. I helped somebody who is a good friend who I really cared about. She got to own a house, which she really wanted to do. And she ended up, when she moved away, ended up with more than 25% of the sales price cash after tax in her pocket. So it was like, I mean, it was a huge win, right? And so that was an example of a win-win solution. And I want to be able to, share that. And I also want to orient my thinking because there's win-win solutions all the way around, right? Anytime I do something that lifts me and everybody else up, that's a win-win solution. And so I want to be more attuned to recognizing that as such, right? Because if you have the ability to create win-win solutions in your life, but you don't know you have the ability, then the chances of you identifying those situations and taking advantage of those situations and utilizing that ability is dramatically decreased, and we don't want that, right? I mean, obviously, we want all the joy, upliftment, and success that we can have in our life, and so, but part of it is orienting our thinking to say, "Oh yeah, you know what? I didn't think of that as a win-win example, but it really was because it cheered me up and it allowed them to experience their value in supporting me and being there with me, so their self-esteem went up and my return to sanity was once again achieved with somebody's help. So I mean, it's win-win. But if we start looking for, uplifting situations and say, can that honestly be characterized as a win-win solution? Then, we get better at it, right? So, so that was another thing that, another step towards becoming more confident that, with persistence, that I'll keep finding steps to take to make win-win thinking the dominant thinking in the world, steps to take in achieving the goal, right? So when I was buying a house, right? So one step was is to figure out like what area we wanted to live in. Another step was to find a house that was for sale. Another step was to believe I could do it. Another step was to write a purchase offer. Another step was to counter the offer and finally come to an agreement. Another step was to get the loan. Another step was to organize the move. So there were all these steps along the way that had to take place in order for the goal of buying and living in a house in this area, that we make that a reality, make that something that we created in our life. And so when I think of creating win-win thinking as a dominant thinking in the world, I say, okay, well, you know what? Having the idea, which I didn't even have a couple weeks ago, of inviting people to share their win-win experiences on a podcast so that we can put it out there and advance this process. You know, that's even having the idea of doing that as a step, and I'm still working with people on following through, right? The next step. I mean, we had the idea of doing it, and I have at least one person who's interested in doing it, is trying to get himself oriented to doing it. And what we're finding is that there has to be even a change of thinking in many cases to be able to recognize and identify something as a win-win solution. So I'm working with him and we're working through all that, right? But just having the idea was a step forward. And then eventually I'm pretty confident that we'll actually, have at least one person. And I'm pretty confident that we'll have more than one person eventually sharing win-win solutions. Already getting ideas of people that I can contact that would be where it wouldn't be a big stretch, and it would be something that they would probably be interested in doing. It would be recording their creation of a win-win solution and all of the details and how it went and so on and so on. But that's another step. And so I'm having, and when I start to see that, oh, it's just a step like, when I, made a purchase contract or purchase offer. It's just a step. There wasn't the last step to getting in the house, but it was a step along the way. And so now I'm starting to see that I'm making steps along the way, and that by continuing to work on my mantra is like I am the world, right? It helps me more and more identify with being one with all that exists. Then uh, I'm noticing that my confidence and my ability to create win-win thinking as the dominant thinking in the world is going up. I just notice myself becoming more and more confident. And I know that if I keep taking steps with each step, I'm going to become more confident that I'm going to get there, right? It's the same way. And I have that same kind of calm certainty, I'll say, that I had when I bought the house, right? Because it was really a busy time in the mortgage business and I was taking care of my clients and not taking care of my own loan. And it was taking 45 days to close a loan, and I was like 2 weeks from closing, and I hadn't even submitted my application yet. But I knew people, and this happened, and that happened, and everything happened, and I closed on time. And the whole time, I didn't worry about a thing. I was just like calm. And I'm starting to feel more and more that calm and that confidence about creating win-win thinking is the dominant thinking in the world. I know what to do. Don't give up. Stick on my mantra. Always look for new ways to relate to being one with all that exists, and notice and get appreciate confirmation that I'm making progress in that growth by becoming aware of additional steps I can take to advance win-win thinking in the world, and that I have the energy to take those steps and follow through. So it's uh, having an example, and I do it in my coaching all the time, right? Is I help people identify examples in their life of when they did things right and everything worked, and what was the cause of all of that. Because many times is that things go great for us, right? But we don't realize what the cause was. So we stop repeating and building on our cause of what's good, right? And like one of the things that I know is that the cause of, I believe, all the good in my life has come about as a result of meditation, of listening to myself more honestly and deeply and completely. And so I make sure that, no matter how well things are going, that I don't slack on my medication, because that would be ignoring that, that'd be starving the goose that's laying these golden eggs, right? It's like, when they, stick with what got you here, right? Don't, if it works, don't fix it. So, but I love to help people realize, what they did to create the benefit in their life so that they can continue to do those things that are the cause of creating benefit in their life. And that's really, who knew I'm actually taking some of my own advice? When does that ever happen? It's well known that the hardest advice to take is our own. So I'm really proud of myself that I'm taking my own advice and reaching back into my past to take a success and milk more of the learning and the growth and the self-acceptance and the power out of that self out of that. So anyway, that's a greater, what I was after in this podcast was a more detailed acceptance of the process of creation that works for me, that I can identify with and have confidence in moving forward. And I absolutely do that. And it's just, it's pleasing, it's relaxing, it's a little bit astonishing that uh, my confidence in my ability to advanced win-win thinking to be the dominant thinking in the world has actually gone up in the course of recording this podcast. So that's a good thing. It's cool. So anyway, if you want to contact me, I offer thought coaching, right? And also I offer the opportunity for you to share your win-win experiences. And you can set all that up by contacting me at scottfriedman40 at gmail.com, ScottFriedman40 at gmail.com. My books are available on Amazon. You can find links to them on my website, www.thoughtcoachingbyscott.com. All righty, so I'm sure that you've done some things where you created something in your life that was wonderful, that everybody around you benefited, or at least some people around you very clearly benefited in some way. And so I encourage you to identify a win-win solution in your life. And I'd love to have you as a guest. And if that doesn't work, at least learn from what you did right so you can do more of it. Okay. My books are available on Amazon. You can find links to them on my website, www.thoughtcoachingbyscott.com. So you have the ability to create whatever you want in the world. in your life and in the world. Your mind and my mind, everybody's mind, is that powerful. So let's all start taking increasing ownership of the power of our minds to create and the use of our will to direct our mind as to what we want it to create. All right. I can help you with that if you want. And if you want to do it on your own, you're certainly capable of doing that as well. All right. Take care.